So this is Love, Chapter 9. The palace was a labyrinth of halls, but the Duke's attendant did not design to give Cinderella a tour. For her part, she was so focused on trying to keep up that she almost didn't notice when they arrived in front of the Duchess's chambers. "She'll be expecting you," was all her guard said before he swiftly deserted her. "Wait, do I?" The Duke's attendant had already turned the corner. "Knock?" Cinderella whirled to face the Duchess's massive doors, both sides flanked by unsmiling guards. "Do you suppose I go inside?" she asked them. No response. "Report to me everything about the Duchess," the Grand Duke had instructed. Cinderella bit her lip. That didn't strike her as a typical task given to royal attendants. Gathering her courage, she took the gilded knocker and tapped softly. Then she clasped the knob and turned, entering the Duchess's apartments as quietly as she could. "That was fast," rasped a voice, startling Cinderella. "I take it you're my next victim?" Before her, the Duchess of Orleans sat on her writing desk, a coil of salt and pepper hair gathered at her nape, punctuated by emerald and amethyst hairpins that matched her violet gown and its green trimming. Her face didn't seem to match the refinery of her garments. It was like a quill, long and narrow, and with gray eyes as sharp as polished nibs. "I'm sorry, Your Grace," said Cinderella, bowing. "I am sorry, Your Highness," corrected the Duchess. "I'm a member of the royal family, unlike Ferdinand." She snapped her book closed and harumphed. "They send me a girl who doesn't even know how to address me properly. How like George. How absent-minded." Venturing deeper into the sitting room, Cinderella was about to repeat her apology when the Duchess grabbed the walking stick behind her desk and rose. "Stay off the rug," the king's sister barked. She wrinkled her nose at Cinderella, her sharp eyes taking in the cuts on her hands, the bruises on her temples, hidden under her ill-fitting wig. "You smell dirty. Have you been out in the rain?" Heat rushed to Cinderella's cheeks. "There was a storm last night, Your Highness, and I only—" "Stop!" The Duchess raised a gloved hand. "I don't want to hear any more. You are dismissed." Cinderella bit her lip to keep it from trembling. Madame Ermina had warned her that she wouldn't last in the palace, but even she must have expected it to last more than 5 minutes. "On your way out, you may tell whoever thought you fit to attend me to turn in their resignation as well." "But, Your Highness—" "Out, I said. Can't you hear?" The Duchess reached toward the nearest table, picking up a silver call bell and muttering, "Wait till I get my hands on George. Does he think this is some sort of practical joke? How dare his staff send me a servant who—" "Oh, you mustn't blame Madame Ermina," Cinderella cried. "What was that?" She drew her breath. "It wasn't her fault or the king's." The Duchess clamped the bell to her palm, suffocating its clang. "Of course it wasn't my brother's fault. Do you think he has time to oversee the hiring of servants? Ferdinand manages the royal retainers." "Please don't dismiss anyone because of me," Cinderella said quietly. "I'll leave now, so Madame Ermina can send you a new girl right away." She gave a despondent curtsy, then turned for the door. "Wait, I've changed my mind." The Duchess pounded her walking stick on the ground, a cue Cinderella did not understand. "Well, don't be a mouse. Come here and let me look at you." Trying to hide her confusion and careful to avoid stepping on the carpets, Cinderella traced back toward the Duchess. Said the king's sister, considering. "Your dress is a size too large, and your wig, impossible. It's practically slipping off your head." The Duchess let out a sigh. "I suppose your smell isn't that offensive. See to it that you bathe tonight. Thoroughly. Is that clear?" "Oh, yes, ma'am." "Shush. I'm not finished. I should be insulted that my attendant has little experience in the palace, but I suppose it would be Ferdinand's way to find yet more petty ways to slight me." Duchess Genevieve glowered at her. "He sent you specifically to insult me, didn't he? Well, I will not give him the satisfaction of sending you back." The Duchess circled Cinderella, studying her with a frown. "You're a rather pretty girl, aren't you? Bright-eyed, cheery, and earnest-looking. Clearly an inexperienced member of the royal household. Don't expect that to make me like you more. Don't expect that to make me trust you either. But it appears I don't have a choice but to keep you, do I? Lunch is in an hour, and I need assistance dressing for the occasion." Her thin brows knit together skeptically. "You do know how to dress a lady, don't you?" "Heavens, judging by your outfit, I am not sure I want to know the answer to that question." Cinderella hesitated. She had fitted her stepsisters into their fine clothes plenty of times, but a duchess's gowns would be far more elegant and elaborate than anything Drizella or Anastasia ever wore. "I don't know, ma'am," she replied truthfully. "Don't know. I have never served a duchess before." "You don't say," said the king's sister with a scoff. "You'd better learn quickly, otherwise you will not be staying past lunch." "Yes, ma'am." "Unless I address you, you are a statue," continued the duchess, taking on an instructional tone. "All servants of the palace are to be invisible, not to be seen, heard, or even noticed. Hear me? I do not intend on being made an embarrassment in my brother's court. I understand. Good." The duchess harumphed again, then strode to her bedchamber to retrieve the fur stole draped over the chair. "What do you think of this?" "That?" Cinderella stared at the stole and tried not to wrinkle her nose. She might not be knowledgeable about the latest fashions at court, but it didn't take much of an eye to tell it was the most hideous thing she'd ever seen. "Out with it, girl." "If I may be honest, your highness, it is not very flattering on you. I would suggest a simple cape, perhaps an emerald green to match the trimming on your gown instead." Duchess Genevieve's thin lips curved in surprise. "It isn't, is it? Funny that Lady Alarna should say it suits me perfectly. Yet, that's the thing with my brother's court. Everyone says what you want to hear." She tossed the stole onto the bed and cast a glance at the clock. "We'll need an entirely new ensemble then. If that makes me late for lunch, so be it. My brother can wait. Women are always waiting on men. Let it be the other way around for change." Cinderella tilted her head, surprised that the Duchess should act so impertinent toward the king, but she didn't question it. "Yes, ma'am. I should have at least 3 girls waiting on me," the Duchess said testily as Cinderella helped her select a new outfit. "Short on staff indeed." She fluttered her handkerchief at the swarms of maids outside the window skittering across the royal lawn. "What do you think they're all doing?" Cinderella wasn't sure whether she was supposed to answer. "They're on their way inside, ma'am, to do the dusting, the polishing, sweeping, and heaven knows what else," the Duchess interrupted. "The chandeliers don't need to be cleaned twice a day, and the windows certainly don't need to be wiped every hour." Her gaze swept across the chambers, and she crossed her arms. "My desk could use a better dusting, though." "You missed a button, girl." Cinderella bit her lower lip. It wasn't like her to be so careless. After years of working under her stepmother's careful scrutiny, she had learned to be quick yet efficient. Her nerves were failing her. "Enough," the Duchess said. "I can't finish the rest myself. Go away." Cinderella blinked. "Pardon? What don't you understand, girl?" the king's sister huffed. "I'm off to lunch, and I do not want some grubby young girl I've barely met scrounging around my chambers. So be off, and I don't mean wandering off for the rest of the day. I can barely stand longer than an hour's lunch with George, and I have a perfect internal clock. If you are not back before I'm finished, I will have no choice but to send you back for good." Relief flooded Cinderella's chest. "I see. Yes, ma'am. And if anyone asks whose attendant you are not mine." "Understood, ma'am." Cinderella had no idea where to go. An hour wasn't long enough to explore the castle with its maze of hallways, anterooms, and courts. Deciding it was best not to wander too far, she made her way around the Duchess's wing and stopped before a long hall that housed a gallery of portraits. To her immediate left was a portrait of the king and Duchess as children. Genevieve carried her baby brother in her arms, a half smile perched on her lips as George tugged on her sleeve. In another painting, the two were slightly older, riding the same pony in front of a fountain in the royal gardens. The Duchess had a mischievous glint in her eye, and a wide grin Cinderella couldn't imagine the stern lady wearing now. Seeing the Duchess as a girl of 5 or 6 made Cinderella smile. "They look close, the king and his sister. I wonder what changed." With a sigh, she progressed down the hall, observing the king growing older with each painting she passed. In the middle of the gallery, a regal young woman appeared by the king's side, the queen. Whoever had painted her had captured the intensity of her gaze, for it was so arresting that when Cinderella stopped to get a closer look, she almost curtsied before the portrait. She leaned toward the painting, studying the queen. Her hair was raven black like her son, the prince's, her eyes dark yet luminous. "Back from your morning ride, your highness?" Cinderella threw a glance behind her, and her heart nearly stopped. At the other end of the hall was the prince. A deep frown beset his face as he strode down the hall looking harried. His attendant practically had to run to keep up with him. "Do I bow?" she wondered frantically. She needed to make a decision before he passed by. Hastily she bent in a curtsy. She knew she was not to peek up and glance at him, not to say a single word unless addressed or spoken to. But she couldn't help it. She looked up. Seeing him again, a wash of memories overwhelmed her. How wonderful it had been to dance for the first time in years. When she closed her eyes, she could still remember the smell of the ballroom, a potpourri of perfumes from the hundreds of guests, with the faintest hint of lemon from the shining floors. She could feel the soft ruby carpet under her heels and hear the lush waltz music echoing up to the high ceilings of the ballroom. And how kind he had been to her. Not a trace of the arrogance she would have expected from a royal heir to the kingdom. She supposed that was why she hadn't even known he was a prince. And their kiss, simply remembering it, made Cinderella's face warm. "Your Highness," she almost said, but she stopped herself. "Your Highness what? Your Highness, I'm the runaway princess. Only I'm not really a princess, I'm just Cinderella." She bit her tongue. She couldn't do it. Why not? She stared after him as he passed her, not sure if she knew the answer. The prince wasn't dressed in formal attire, but in a navy suit with a thin cord of silver trimming the sleeves and collar. No medals adorned his jacket, and no epaulets sat on his shoulders. Yet, Cinderella found she liked him even more like this, with a smudge of dirt on the cuff of his sleeve and a stray piece of hay hanging to the side of his pants. How much he looked simply like a young man she might have met in town. She could almost have forgotten he was a prince. Almost. Prince Charles was nearly at the end of the corridor when he suddenly stopped. He turned and retraced his steps until he stood in front of her, and Cinderella held her breath, her pulse hammering in her ears. He smiled at her, and something flickered across his dark eyes, a spark of recognition. Cinderella's heart lifted. "You," he said quietly. He gestured at the lavender sash. "You must be Aunt Genevieve's new attendant." Cinderella blinked, sure she had misheard, but the voice kept speaking. Prince kept speaking. "Welcome. My aunt is very dear to me, and I would be most grateful if you saw to it that she is comfortable here." Cinderella's lips parted with disappointment. Struggling to find the words, she curtsied again. Before she could utter anything at all, Prince Charles wished her well and was gone. "Yes, your Highness," she whispered, watching him disappear down the hall. Slowly, as her heart sank, a terrible ache rose in her throat. She had been sure he would recognize her. Was it the wig? Why didn't I take it off? Why didn't I say anything? She inhaled, trying to ease away the sadness swelling inside her. Even with the wig, she thought he would have known her. Maybe it hadn't been love after all. Maybe he was only searching for her because his father wanted him to get married. What does it matter? She admonished herself. This is the chance at happiness I've always wanted. I'm free of my stepmother, and I have a new life in the palace. It'd be silly to risk losing that new life and throw my heart away on a boy, prince or not, that I don't even know. I'm not going to look for him again, she decided, pushing all thoughts of Prince Charles aside. She needed her work as the Duchess's attendant more than she needed a prince. She'd pour all her energy toward her position in the palace. Then she'd make new dreams for herself. Dreams like seeing more of the world and helping others. Like her fairy godmother. She frowned, murmuring to herself, "The next time I see her, I'll have to ask her what she meant by her magic being forbidden here." But she had no idea when she'd see Lenore again. She couldn't summon her fairy godmother while she was working in the palace, not after what she had said or hadn't said about the ban on magic. Certainly not the Grand Duke constantly lurking about, waiting on her for reports. His portrait stared at Cinderella from the wall, and a wave of dread rushed over her. In her first hour serving Duchess Genevieve, she'd done nothing but help the king's sister dress for lunch. What exactly was the Duke expecting her to report to him? What her fashion tastes were? What flavor of tea she liked to drink? Cinderella hoped she wouldn't have to find out.